Welcome to Lesson 8 of Quick and Effective Environment Illustration. In this lesson, we're going to continue refining our layer shapes. In this case, the tree. This foreground tree, we're gonna change this from a block-in to a refined layer shape. So we're gonna take it from where it's at now, which is a general block-in with the general feel and the dynamic of this tree, of these lines, of these shapes. We're going to start to flesh that out, just as if this was figure work and you had a gesture that you needed to now refine by adding anatomy and figuring the anatomy of the figure out. Now we figure the anatomy of the tree. We've got the gesture of the tree, and now it's time to refine those edges and build up the details. Now, the tree has a growth, a certain process to how it grows, and that really informs how you're going to draw the thing. And what I mean is the thick trunk and the radiating out branches, and branches that then radiate out smaller, ever thinner and thinner as it go out to twigs, as it goes out to leaves. And I'm getting that effect by every time I go from a main branch stroke to the next step in the branch work. I thin up my brush a little. I drop it down. It might be like and then I drop it down to a 5 when I'm doing these thin layers, thin lines of the thin branches. And a tree really has a lot going on. And if you're just looking at a picture and trying to copy it and put it in your image, you might be in for a lot of trouble and a lot of headaches. Your best bet with trees, as with most elements that you're called upon to draw, you got to study them a little bit beforehand. You got to do some sketches and drawings and just get a feel for what makes the tree stand apart. What about the lines makes it dynamic? What is the character, Even going as far as comparing the tree to the clouds. The clouds have soft edges. The tree has nearly always a hard edge, at least on the outline. A cloud has these clouds have a very rounded shape, a very flowing shape, and the tree has a very sharp, to me it has a very sharp, dynamic line to it. And so you keep that in mind with every stroke you put down. And also the growth pattern, the wind is probably blowing it over, and all the branches are moving over this way. And so as I keep that stuff in mind, I just go around just drawing up the tree. I've got the reference, which has some good details and good ideas, and I use that as a starting point. But often, well, especially in tree ref, there's often so much more than you can really hope to get in your image, unless you were doing a huge study of just that particular tree. Because each one of these little branches does have plenty of detail on it. If you were to actually go up and inspect that branch, it's really limitless detail, and the trick is to just putting in what you need at the distance you are to make it read. And in this case, most of all we need is the silhouette, is the outline, is a strong dynamic layer shape. And then we're going to have some general light and shadow, and then we'll have the light at the top where it's catching direct sunlight. And we'll start to add some indications of bark and texture and growth patterns and stuff, but the most important part, especially a tree such as this, it's in the shadow, it's in the foreground, is the outline, is this silhouette, and keeping it interesting, but keeping it looking natural, keeping it almost looking random. Which, as you work on a section of a piece and spend more time on it, things can start to get monotonous and start to pick up an artificial look to them. And that's why you don't want to get caught up with rendering stuff too soon. You use the rendering stage at the end when you know that your drawing is solid, and all you need to do is add more life to what's there. You don't need, could you imagine making all these corrections when there's already light and shade indicated on this tree? That would mean every erasure I'd have to go and fix not only the shape, but also the color and the value, and making sure that the new form reads correctly. That's why we try to nail the shape down first, quickly, and then we can effectively color it up when it's time to. So this tree's looking pretty good so far. You flip the canvas back and forth to check your balance, to see if you've added a line somewhere that's adding too much weight, that's throwing the picture out of balance, and if there is, you got to correct it. And ideally, you want to just look at the picture and it to feel your eyes to comfortably rest on that image, not being distracted by one thing or another, or anything that's not the focal point. And that's a case of keeping it balanced, keeping your composition balanced, and that's what we're doing here in this first half of the production. We're building up a solid composition, a solid foundation, because very quickly we're going to finish up the blocking stage, and then we can start laying in color, laying in texture, and getting rid of the flat graphic look and bringing a roundness to the form, and bringing a texture and a light and shadow and a lot more interest. Right now we've just got a large, dark foreground shape, but we need to make sure that shape is defined right before we go in and add all our interest and detail to it. Now, if you see with each stroke how I change the thickness of the brush, the hotkey, I use the bracket hotkeys to quickly increase the size, decrease the size, step it up by 1 or 2, step it down by 1 or 2, and by keeping that hierarchy of thicknesses on this tree, it really helps to sell it as a convincing tree. And it's looking like this is a great layer shape we've got, and it's a great mask to use to start coloring. But before we start coloring things up, we've got to finish the blocking stage. So we'll wrap this lesson up here, and in the next lesson we'll finish the blocking stage.